We've been working our way through the book of Genesis throughout this fall. After today, we just have a couple of weeks left in this series. The book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, which begins in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. God created the world. He said it was good. In fact, he said it was very good. God created human beings in his image, designed our purpose, the reason why we exist, to enjoy God forever and to know his love forever. But then a shadow fell upon God's good creation. Darkness, evil came into this world. Sin and death, and what we call the lie of sin. We're all born with this, whether we realize it or not, a deep mistrust of God. We doubt the goodness of God. That's what's buried deep within all of us. That's essentially what sin is inside of us. So God, immediately after that, began his plan of salvation, and he made a promise that one was going to come, this sort of shadowy, messianic figure, born of a woman, who was going to defeat sin and death, was going to shatter that lie of sin, and was going to show to the world the grace, the love, the mercy of God, to do battle with that lie of sin. And it's that promise which was given to Adam and Eve and to their son Seth. And then down the generations, that promise was given to Noah. And then down the generations, that promise was given to Abraham and to his son Isaac. And then Isaac had two sons, twins. The oldest born was called Esau, and the second born was Jacob. And because Esau was the firstborn, that meant the promise and the blessing of the firstborn was given to him. He was going to carry the family line and the family name. And so Isaac doted on Esau, and he poured all of his love and his affection and how proud he was. He just poured that into Esau, and Jacob was pretty much ignored and forgotten, deeply wounded. So Rebekah then comes alongside because she's heard that Isaac, he's now blind, he's old. He wants to give that blessing of the firstborn son. She comes alongside to Jacob and says, hey, I want you, this is a good idea, dress up like Esau. You're going to look like Esau. You're going to smell like Esau. You're going to feel like Esau, and you go in there. And Jacob did it, and he stole deceitfully the promise of the firstborn son. When Esau comes back, he is enraged when he understands what has happened. And he vows, I am going to kill my brother. I am going to murder Jacob. And so Jacob has to flee. He runs away to a region called Haran that we just heard about. And that's where they had some relatives, some descendants there of Abraham still. And now it's been 20 years by the time of Genesis chapter 32. 20 years since Jacob ran away. He now has a family of his own. He's a wealthy man. And God comes to him and he says this. This is in Genesis 31, verse 3. The Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So God now comes to Jacob and says, you got to return to the land of your fathers, your kindred. What that means is, Jacob, it is now time to face Esau. All these years later. And what I want us to see here is Jacob, who, as we've seen, is not a wonderful guy all the time. But here he is obedient. He is faithful. I mean, he didn't have to go. He could have stayed there. He could have gone someplace else. But he travels with his family from Haran to Beersheba, the land of Canaan, the promised land. And as he gets closer to where his family was and to where Esau was, he sends out some messengers. And the messengers come back with this report. It says in chapter 32, verse 6, that the messengers returned to Jacob saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he's coming to meet you. And there are 400 men with him. that Esau is going to come tomorrow morning with 400 men. He has put together, he has amassed a small army. And it says in verse 7 that then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Again, that now Jacob, he knew that coming back might mean Esau killing him or hurting his family, but now he knows he's put together a small army of 400 men. And again, what we're supposed to see here is the faithfulness of Jacob, and he is being obedient. He doesn't run away, knowing what he's about to face the very next day. In fact, it says here in verse 11 that he's praying to God. He says, "Please, God, deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me and attack my family. God, please help." And then there's this little detail. In verse 22, that's where we began just a few moments ago with Pastor Micah's reading. It says that same night, you can just imagine Jacob wrestling with this. That same night Jacob arose and he took his whole family and crossed the ford of the Jabbok River. And he took them, his family, and he sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. So he takes his whole family, he says, "You go over here." And then the text says that Jacob was left alone. The long, dark night of the soul. And we can only kind of speculate why Jacob wanted to be alone. Maybe to prepare himself, to have time alone to think. I would suppose to continue in prayer. God, please help me. Help me to be faithful. Help me to face my brother. And so in the midst of all of this, as Jacob is doing what God has told him to do, he is being faithful, he is being obedient to what God has called him to do. How does God respond? God responds to Jacob by literally attacking him. Like literally, physically attacking him. It says here that Jacob was alone and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day, but it comes clear throughout this text, it is disclosed that this man was no mere man, that this was God himself. That God is physically attacking Jacob, wrestling him down to the ground, it says until the breaking of the day, all night long. What is this? What is going on? This is strange. Well, let me say what it isn't. This isn't what we might call, and I hate to even use the terminology, but it is certainly not what we call sort of a liberal understanding of God or of religion. A more liberal understanding of God, which is God is just sort of this sort of warm, fuzzy being of love, and do whatever you want to do, think whatever you want to think, believe whatever you want to believe, and he just sort of accepts, and it's just love, and there's no holiness, and there's no That's not what we see here. But also note, it is also not what we might call a conservative or traditional understanding of God or of religion either, is it? Because a more conservative or traditional understanding of God or of religion is you obey, you keep the rules, you be faithful, and God will therefore almost have to bless you and bring blessings and favor into your life. That's not what's happening here either. Jacob is being faithful, he is being obedient, he is following what God has called him to do, and God jumps him in the middle of the night. God attacks, God physically grapples with him and wrestles with him. What is going on? Why is God doing this? We know Jesus oftentimes taught in parables. So a parable is an earthly story, an earthly setting, but has a deeper spiritual meaning and reality, an earthly story with a heavenly meaning, as I learned in Sunday school. I think what we see here we might want to call an enacted or a lived out in a physical way parable that God is showing Jacob and showing to all of us all these years later as he wrestles with God. Because isn't that, whether we like it or not or want to accept it or not, isn't that almost always, invariably, if there are seasons where there is a deeper experience or a deeper relationship with God that comes, or a time in which there is a sort of a kingdom breakthrough where there's actually trust that grows and a relationship that grows with God, isn't that almost always through a season of wrestling and struggling with Him? And what this wrestling is, wrestling is really, again, that lie of sin. It's doubting the goodness of God. It's wrestling with actually believing that God is good. I mean, this type of deeper blessing, this type of relationship, this type of breakthrough, I mean, I don't think it ever comes through comfort and easy living, but through wrestling. I mean, some of you, you're on easy street right now. I am so happy for you. And many of you aren't. And in various ways, in various degrees, there are people who are really wrestling with God and really struggling to believe that God is good. Some of you might be wrestling and doubting because you are hurting, or a loved one is hurting, and you are praying. Some of you have been praying for 10 or 20 or 30 or more years, and it seems like God isn't listening, and you really wrestle. God, are you there? Are you good? Some of you maybe wrestle with, in a changing culture, what the Bible actually says about different things, and how can I believe that God's a good God if He says these things and I don't understand? And that's a real wrestle. Some of you maybe wrestle with God or doubt His goodness because you have thoughts and you have feelings, or you've done things that are, outside of His design, and you're really wrestling to believe that God could still love you or accept you or want you. That's doubting that He's good. Or some of you wrestle with God because there's these false gods, these idols of your life, and you've been pouring into, and that's where you're looking for your sense of safety or security or your identity and who you are, and maybe God has taken that false god away and you are hurting. We wrestle. If you live long enough, you're going to, or just the idea of, is there a God? Because if there's a God and He's real, that means He's ultimately in control. And I don't know if I can trust Him, again, doubting His goodness. It's this enacted parable. It's like physically living out this spiritual reality with Jacob. And there were two broad themes to Jacob's life. The first theme was wrestling. If you've heard the story, remember, Jacob was actually wrestling in the womb with his twin brother Esau, and he wrestled with his brother all of his life. He wrestled with Esau over that birthright. He wrestled with Esau and even used that deception to receive the blessing of his father that he longed to have, that Esau had sort of, in an unofficial way, had always received the love and the pride of his father. And if you were to ask Jacob, hey, what's the fundamental problem of your life? He would say, Esau. I've been wrestling with Esau. And I think here God is showing to him and to us, I think He would say, Jacob, your fundamental problem isn't that you've been wrestling with Esau. Whether you've known it or not, your problem is that you're wrestling with me. The other theme of Jacob's life, besides his wrestling, was his deep need for blessing. to be seen, to be loved, for someone to be proud of him. I mean, going all the way back, of course, to his father, Isaac. And that Jacob was always looking for blessing and trying to deceive and manipulate his way into a blessing from his father. Later on, we don't have time to go into the whole story, but when he's in Haran and he sees this beautiful woman named Rachel, and he says, oh, if only she could be my wife. And it's 14 years that he has to wait. And finally, and even his father-in-law Laban, who was sort of like second father to him, who used him and abused him and deceived him, and he's always looking for blessing. And even when Jacob started to turn back to God a little bit and listen to him, God had come to him in a dream, and Jacob's ladder and the stairway to heaven, we heard a few weeks back, and God promised, said, Jacob, I'm going to give you land, real estate, the promised land, and your offspring will be like the dust of the earth, the stars of the sky. And it says Jacob made a vow. This is chapter 28, verse 20. Jacob made a vow, and he said, if God will give me, if God will be with me, and if he will keep me in this way that I go, and if he gives me all of these promises, and if he gives me all of these blessings that I need, then the Lord shall be my God. If then. Jacob's looking for blessing, needs that deep ache and longing that we all have. And he turns to God, he says, God, I know that you are the one who can bring that blessing and blessings into my life. And in this wrestling, what is God saying to him? He's saying, Jacob, you want me to bring blessings to you. Jacob, you have to see that I am the blessing that you so desperately need and want. That's true for all of us, those longings, that hole in our heart that nothing ever seems to satisfy. It's because you were made for so much more. Jacob, I am the blessing. And here is the fascinating thing about this story. By the end of this story and of this wrestling, there's a transformation, a complete radical change that has taken place in Jacob. At the very end here, verse 26, this man, who's God, says, let me go, for the day has broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. He is just stubbornly, God is the one who jumped him. God is the one who's been wrestling with him. And now Jacob is the one who refuses to let go. He says, I know now that I need you to bless me, and I'm not going to let go. How did that happen? How did that complete change occur? As we close here, verse 25. There's a couple things here that I want us to see as we wrap up. Verse 25 is extraordinary. It says, when the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched Jacob's hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Okay, now, there's a couple layers here. It says this man, again, we know by the end this is God. It says he touched his hip socket. The Hebrew conveys the sense it was a very, very light touch or tap. It wasn't like he punched him or something, right? It literally was just the faintest little tap that he gave, and his entire hip comes out of joint. So that what Jacob literally, physically, but is realizing and experiencing, he's receiving the sense of the supernatural, divine power that this man has. And clearly by the end he says, I've seen God face to face and lived. He comes to the realization that this is God himself. Infinite, almighty, omnipotent, the creator of heaven and earth. he gets the sense of this divine, extraordinary power. But what did it say right before that? That the man saw he did not prevail against Jacob. This man is God. God saw that he did not prevail, was not able to overcome Jacob. What? You've all experienced this. If you've had children or grandchildren or little ones, or ever interacted like a little 2-year-old or 3-year-old, and my daughter is here, but when she was 2 or 3, she would just run at me with everything she had and flail into me, and she could wail on me as much as she wanted. And I'm comfortably over 200 pounds. And of course, what did I do? I would hold back. I'd even let her win. Oh, you got me. Here's what's happening. And this is what Jacob realizes. This is where the transformation. He realizes this is God, more powerful than we could ever possibly imagine. God who purposefully allows himself to be weak. God allows himself to be vulnerable. God allows himself to be defeated. Jacob realizes this is God. He could have incinerated me. He could have just destroyed me. And in fact, he's letting me win. He's given me a victory through his weakness and defeat. And this just breaks his brain. It melts his heart. The lie of sin. Can I trust God? Is God really good? Does he really love me? And here is the infinite God becoming weak and vulnerable and defeated. Now think about it. This is God who takes the form of a man. The infinite, all-powerful God who takes the form of a man and allows himself to become weak and vulnerable and defeated so that Jacob can be blessed. What is this? This is already right here in Genesis chapter 3. This is a pattern. This is a type. This is a foreshadowing of what God had already promised in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, that one, the offspring of a woman, was going to come and was going to crush the head of the serpent and destroy evil and sin, but would receive a fatal blow. This we see here is a foreshadowing of the cross itself. That here God kind of takes the form of a man and in this enacted parable kind of plays this out. But almost 2,000 years after this, in reality, God becomes one of us, takes on frail human flesh, allows himself to be arrested, bound, punched in the face, beaten with rods, scourged with whips, the skin ripped from his flesh, and then he is crucified. This is the punishment of a slave. This is God. And why is God doing all of that? That the lie of sin would be shattered. I know we struggle, we wrestle in so many ways, and deep down it's doubting that God is good. Can you see? God, with nails, with blood. Yes, it is in many ways primitive and obscene and horrific, and God is saying, I love you. And I am the blessing that you need. Please open your heart to me. I am what you need. You can trust me. I know you're struggling. You seem like I haven't answered your prayers, or things in the Word don't make any sense anymore. Or you have feelings and thoughts and behaviors that you don't think I can love you or forgive you. Look. And what did Jacob do? I love this. And so, when we're weak, when we're struggling, when we're in the midst of this doubt, this is so trite. This is like put it on a bumper sticker or put it on a t-shirt. What do? Hold on. But Jacob here at the end, he just stubbornly refuses. He is holding on, not to some abstract God who's far away, some sort of concept, but he's holding on to a God who allowed himself to become weak and vulnerable and defeated. And Jacob is saying, this is what I have always needed. He's holding on, and it's the cross. We hold on to the cross. Because where else can we turn? To know that God is good. On the best days and on the worst days, he is good. He is good. It ends like this, verse 31, the sun rose up, and Jacob leaves this place. He's given a new name, Israel, one who strives with God. Ultimately means one who knows he's saved by grace. And it says that he walked out limping because of his hip. And the implication, he had that limp for the rest of his life. And he goes and he meets his brother Esau. Esau, who was coming over the horizon with 400 men. But Jacob, Israel, is a new man. Now what happens next? Well, stay tuned for the rest of the story.